Whether you like it or not, my friends, live service games are here to stay. Physical media and ownership is just setting sail far away in the distance, and what it's left us with is just a bunch of item shops. And you know what? Maybe it's not that bad.
Welcome to Real Cool. Overwatch 1 is about to end, and Overwatch 2 is about to come. But before we go to Overwatch, let's take a look at the top 10 really cool sexiest.
Seriously, I have spent an absurd amount of time in these games, dude. Just in Rocket League alone, I have 5,497 hours. That's 229 days of my life given away to car soccer. Even though the police raided my house and pointed assault rifles at my face, I still owe like everything I have to live service games, and more specifically Rocket League. Like I've gotten so many experiences. I got a job. I've met lifelong friends, all because of this game. Alongside Discord servers, these live service games are literal social hubs, and they hold so much more importance on shaping our culture and society than a lot of us like to admit, which is exactly why I'm a bit concerned on the way that things are headed. We have reached a point with these games where the success is measured by how quickly they can refill the item shop rather than how well they can build communities within the game. The modern live service formula has basically turned into the myth of Sisyphus, okay? Like the modern gamer is now sitting here just pushing this boulder up a hill for all of eternity, unfortunately never being able to reach the top. The tragedy here isn't the loop, because this has always existed. What's truly tragic now is Sisyphus himself, aka the gamer, and the fact that he is now way more unhappy. The purpose of the individual now is starting to fade, and the idea of community is being traded in for seasonal content. And what I've learned throughout like my 10,000 hours in live service games is that this painting looks a little bit more like this. And, my Photoshop skills suck a little bit, but I'm telling you, this is how things are right now. And I'm going to prove to you that this should be in like the Vatican Museum, because I genuinely believe this is the only way to visualize the modern tragedy of games that can't die. My experience in the live service genre actually dates further back than just Rocket League, and it started with Team Fortress 2. I sunk 2,525 hours into this game as well, so I really think I am qualified today to be yapping about this. And the yap session has now started. Please pay attention, get out your notebooks, and get ready to start the class, because I am going to put you on. Team Fortress 2 literally invented the modern day live service format. Before Fortnite, before Apex Legends and the Battle Pass, we just had the Scout, the Heavy, and some sick hats. Initially, Team Fortress 2 was a paid experience. It was a part of the orange box, okay? You had to pay money, and then you got this as like a bundle with a bunch of other cool stuff, which is actually insane when you look at what this was offering, but that's a story for another video. Team Fortress 2 specifically in this bundle blew up, and Valve 3 years later were like, oh my gosh, dude, they cannot put this game down. Everybody keeps playing Team Fortress 2. How can we make more money off of them? So in 2010, the Mann-Conomy update dropped, and it changed all of gaming forever. This is like the beginning of the end. Valve figured out a way to create an online economy in a sessions-based shooter game with things like real money cosmetics and player trading, which eventually created a money printing machine for them. I'm talking crates, hats, items, and like shirtless Australians, dude. They had everything, and the game would eventually go on to be free to play. Now, at this point, you might be yelling at your screen like, dude, I don't give a bro, why are you yapping to me about this old game? I literally don't care. You look just like every other white YouTuber with glasses that's yapping about video games, or even worse, a white man with a green screen. But just stick with me for a second, because this is the DNA of everything that we all play today. What Valve had accidentally figured out how to do is create an interest in a game that would continuously just get updates and literally never never die. It was like this immortal money-making machine, dude. Why do you think everybody in every company wants to have a live service game? Valve injected this format into a first-person shooter and proved that a competitive game could somehow turn into not just a video game that you enjoyed, but a place and a community that you wanted to hang out and just simply exist in, bro. They figured out a way to create the neighborhood basketball court, but digitally and in a first-person shooter. You don't just go to the basketball court to play basketball. You go there to hang out with your friends, you know, throw in a little bit of trash talk and show off your sick new shoes, which in this case would just be like sick new unusual hats and items. But eventually, and I guess this is true with all things, the funding for the basketball court starts to run dry. Nowadays, Team Fortress 2 is basically dead in Valve's eyes, and it's not because Team Fortress 2 failed. It's literally because Valve didn't want to work on it anymore, so they just stopped giving it meaningful updates. But here's the crazy thing, and we can look back now on my horrible Photoshop artwork. You know, if you notice Team Fortress 2 down here just like dead on the floor, the thing of it is, while it appears to be dead, the game and the community and the servers are still up and running because Valve, while they abandoned the game, still are giving away some of the keys to the kingdom to let the community and the players do what they want with it and play the game still. It's sad and neglectful, but I can at least respect the fact that they are wanting to move on and do something else. And with this dusty basketball court that Valve have abandoned, it now concludes the story of the first ever modern day live service game. And the sequel might be scarier. See, in the first movie, the landlord just kind of left the court and stopped hanging out. But in the second movie, no, they're always watching, and they are staying on the court and making sure you are playing by the rules. The focus of newer live service games is now hyper optimization. They aren't trying to let the game die, which is great, but they're also so focused on the bottom line that the organic, messy community stuff, the stuff that made us fall in love with the game in the first place, gets deprioritized. And this is where modern day games like Rocket League start to come into the picture a little bit. Dude, I freaking love this game. It is genuinely one of the greatest games that's ever existed, and that's even out right now. Like, if you've seen it or played it for a little bit, you will understand. If you watched the Justin goal back in season 5, you will understand the greatness of it.
He's still around. Justin is there for the shot. Justin! This is Rocket League!
It's like a digital sport that is so pure that an 85-year-old and a 5-year-old can both watch the game and understand what's happening. But all of this success has created a weird paradox. There is a growing voice within the community that's not just a bunch of like mad Redditors, but also prominent voices and content creators in the scene that are airing out their frustrations with the state of the game that's been out for 10 years, alluding to the fact that it might be losing a bit of its soul. But how does this even happen? What is the soul of a video game? How do you strip away something like that from the game? Well, actually, the answer to that question is you just start taking away things that feel human. On December 5th, 2023, Rocket League decided to take a very, very sharp turn and remove player-based trading. And this, to me, marks the big difference between like old era live service games and new era live service games. Bro, the item shop at Marvel Rivals, man, what is happening over there? To the casual player and tourist in a live service game, trading is like not a big deal at all. They literally don't care whatsoever. Like, why does it matter? But to the person who's pushing the boulder up the mountain and grinding ranked every single day, trading to this individual is very, very important to their autonomy and purpose inside of the game. Trading means that you actually have a sense of ownership in this digital world, which, you know, if we talk about digital ownership, then it's kind of an illusion because you don't even really own your Steam games. And this newer policy of eliminating player-driven economies and pairing it with updates that exist mainly to funnel in fresh skins and sick cosmetics has basically become the default formula today, which is exactly why the neighborhood basketball court is starting to look a little bit different. The social space goes under construction and some treadmills get placed there on the court with a big neon screen that is showing you what to purchase. It's almost a poetic thing. The more popular certain live service games get, the more limited the options of a consumer become. And that's because newer live service games have realized that they don't need the people pushing the boulder to be happy. They just need to make sure that they stay under the boulder. And so long as the gameplay loop is good and the foundation is beautiful, you don't have to worry about it. But here's the funniest thing that absolutely invalidates everything that my stupid, idiotic mouth is regurgitating right now, and it's the fact that Rocket League is currently peaking with its player base. As of early 2026, the game has reached a massive spike in popularity, and on paper, this looks like a huge win for everybody involved. For this to happen, the game literally stumbled into a perfect storm. One of the biggest streamers on the planet, Jynxzi, went all in on Rocket League, collaborating with other creators in the scene and dragging a massive new audience in with him. Add nationwide bad weather in the US, keeping kids and adults from work stuck inside, and of course the attention exploded. And objectively, this is amazing. Like, this is so good. I'm so happy that more and more people are playing this game and realizing how good Rocket League truly is. But for somebody who's interested in the long-term health of the game, seeing these numbers can almost be very, very frustrating. The game didn't just like suddenly evolve, or there was a brand new content that dropped and it was amazing and everybody's playing it and getting back involved. No, it was just the game got a little bit louder because of streaming. This whole thing risks validating the decision makers that they don't need to innovate with any new content, but instead just wait for the attention to circle back around because of new streamers or some stroke of luck. And from a business perspective, this makes perfect sense. Why would you prioritize, upgrading the engine or working on a potential sequel or fixing a lot of the issues that the community has been voicing for quite some time when you can just get Jynxzi to scream at Musty in a game, and that'll do more for your bottom line than anything else could. Oh my God! This cycle where attention spikes and peaks and dips is kind of why I think all of these live service games now are really, we're in that purgatory, dude. We are on the hill pushing the boulder up, but it's getting heavier and heavier. But what if this mountain actually had a peak? What if I was to tell you that there is a game that's older than Rocket League and has roots older than Team Fortress 2 that somehow found a way to get up this mountain, and instead of suffocating under the weight of that boulder, they just grew stronger instead? It's time to talk about old school Runescape. On the surface, this game just looks like a medieval 2007 clicking simulator that someone forgot to turn off, but underneath, you will find one of the, if not the best example of a community-led and driven game that is a live service. While so many other titles are trying to figure out ways to manage their player base, old school Runescape has simultaneously partnered up with everyone playing their game. The developers don't just drop updates on a whim when they want to toss in a chiltepin to spice things up. They actually can't do anything unless the community themselves decides on and votes on what to implement next. Players have to agree at least 70% on most decisions to see anything change and get updated inside of the game. And just look at how they communicate to their fan base. Once a year, there is something called the Winter Summit, which is a massive 2.5-hour broadcast where they literally lay out the whole roadmap for what's to come in the game and give you excruciatingly deep, detailed, diagnostics on what they expect to happen and what they're trying to do. Meanwhile, most other live service games are just like outside of the castle doors like,
My lord, please, is there an update today? Have we gotten Unreal Engine 5? Is the heavy update coming? Please, my lord.
When a game is shaped with you instead of at at you, the grind doesn't really feel like a punishment, it just feels like progress. Old school RuneScape figured out how to turn Sisyphus here into like a group project that everybody is happy about doing because they feel like they own parts of the boulder and there's more of a purpose and sense of belonging. But then again, to play devil's advocate, RuneScape is also a subscription-based model, and like, I don't know about you guys, I don't think we want more subscriptions in our lives, so what is the answer here? I don't know. I'm just a moron with a microphone asking some questions. And the biggest question I'm trying to answer is, what's the solution here? Are we just cursed to have a game that either gets abandoned by the developers or struggle to find live service games that aren't constantly stuck in maintenance mode for an eternity until the money starts to slow down? And while there is a subscription, the reason why I bring up RuneScape is just because I think that the focus and emphasis on the community is always going to be the answer, even though most companies and corporations will not want to, trust and respect the community that plays their game. Odds are that is going to be the solution to the longevity problem that these games are tragically facing. I still love these games and play them to this day. The reason why I'm making this video is because it's like, I want what's best for the thing that I've spent the most amount of my time inside of. And if you haven't already watched RLCS, then please tap into that for the Rocket League side of things. If you've never played Team Fortress 2, hop on an Uncle Topia's server and go watch like an Uncle Dane video. I just find it so interesting now that our perspective on these games that can't technically die is going to be different than a game that gets released on like a cartridge and that's the whole thing. That's the full release of it. You know what I'm saying? Like that, it's such a weird, unique, and relatively newer experience that has now gotten some years under the belt, and we can look back on this genre of live service games, and some people might think it's a plague on the industry, and I respect that opinion. Honestly, I just kind of felt like yelling into the void today to see what would regurgitate back at me. Seriously, how much money would you pay for my creation? Also, I think I stole this painting from like somebody else. Who actually painted this? Shout out to Jeffrey Hummel for the base of this whole thing, but now this is my painting now.
Won't take abuse lying down, you mistaken, ain't there for the way, and then I'm quick for the way out. 40 tons on my shoulder trying to get a payout. Every second layover, I'm thinking about the layout. Readjust my trust ideas in the moment, the impossible to plan for the future in the moment.